I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek. So we've finally arrived at Star Trek Discovery. We have seen the first 2 episodes of the 15-episode season.
Including the second episode, which could only be viewed through
CBS All Access. Right. Yeah, so a brand new thing for Star Trek to distribute through online streaming exclusively, unless you're in Canada. But we have a guest with us today. Brian is going to talk about these first 2 episodes with us. And Brian, go ahead and let us know how you got into Star Trek.
I'm just going to quick throw out his bona fides. He won at the Star Trek trivia earlier.
Yeah, we played Star Trek trivia earlier and he kicked my ass.
So, yeah. How did you come to acquire this knowledge?
To be fair, the only person's opinion that I was worried about was his. And I felt like I answered enough questions other people were getting wrong.
You didn't shame yourself
to impress him, and so I feel like that I still look decent in his eyes. That I don't feel bad about losing at all.
No, he did quite good on answering other people's trivia questions. He just did bad on answering his own trivia questions.
But I was getting some ridiculous questions. But Brian, tell us about you and your love of Star Trek.
Well, let's see. I guess they were running it in the evenings on Saturdays, reruns of the old 60s series back when I was a kid, but it would have been about 85, 86. And my cousins were really into it and loaned me a bunch of VHS tapes they'd made of copies of the 60s series, and I watched those, and I was already into science fiction and Doctor Who and Star Wars and stuff, and I think Ghostbusters by that point. So I was like, yeah, this is great. Spaceships and ray guns and teleporters.
There was something meaningful about the VHS tapes and the work that went into recording them and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And made it, they were more like little magical artifacts than just a, here, I burned you a calorie.
I've thrown away so many boxes of VHS tapes that just had just pure gold content recorded on them, and for decades that was all we had to revisit a lot of things that didn't get DVD box set releases because that technology wasn't there yet. But yeah, it's interesting. You said you were into Doctor Who before Star Trek.
Yes.
I think that's probably kind of atypical for most Americans.
Well, not to take things off topic, I'm a huge Doctor Who fan and have been since what is it, 83 or something like that, 84 or something like that. It is woven into my DNA. So is Star Trek from that point on. Once I got hooked, within months I was cosplaying and stuff with my cousins, and I was Spock. We had one of my cousins was Kirk, and the other one was Bones, and then less than a year after we discovered, or maybe a little over a year after we discovered this wonderful thing, then there was this Next Generation, and that was weird. They wore spandex, and so that took some getting used to. But then we decided, no, that's cool too. They got spaceships and they shoot things, and so I just have never stopped. And Star Trek got enough depth to it that as I grew up, you could dig more and more out of it the older you got. I got a bachelor's in physics and a bachelor's in English because it was the only way I could get a degree in science and fiction, and largely due
Sounds like
to
a
Star
practice
Trek.
story.
I am a huge Treknologist and love all the little ins and outs and worked out phaser stuff on how phasers work and tricorders and all of that. And I've spent a lot of time studying the whole social commentary side of the show and the making of it, and got loads, just ridiculous, absurd amounts of my life has been poured into Star Trek for good or bad.
Favorite incarnation?
Series, you mean?
Yeah.
I guess overall the old 60s series, I think, just for style and panache and stuff. Second favorite would be Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
So.
And did you have any favorite episodes that really stand out?
Oh, I mean, they're largely the same ones other people love. I mean, Balance of Terror is fantastic. Amok Time is great. Let That Be Your Last Battlefield is actually one of the ones I really like.
The best episode of season 3.
I have to admit, I watched the original series in Stardate order, so it's all kind of out of that order. It makes more sense in Stardate order, but that means I don't really know quite where the season breaks are. That's also another reason for watching it in Stardate order. You don't have to sit through all of season 3 in one go. It's spread out over the rest of the show.
Pretty sly.
So, and Chekhov shows up on board the Enterprise before Khan does, so you can at least imagine he just was down below decks in that episode.
Continuity fix.
Yes.
With me, it was always production order was my ideal order. But there's 3 different orders to watch the original series. That's insane. It's stupid, but we love it.
I will say the worst episode of Star Trek is not Spock's brain. It is that one with Abraham Lincoln. What is it?
The Savage Curtain.
Savage Curtain. That is by far the worst.
It gave us Kahless and Suruc.
Yes. The the execution was terrible.
It also gave us a really nasty word that I'm not going to say, but...
Yeah, there were some great ideas in that episode that ended up having a lot of runtime in Star Trek, but the actual story is a mess. At least Spock's brain, as a cheesy kid's Saturday morning cartoon, makes sense. They need a brain. They go get a brain. Kirk goes and gets the brain back. That is way more cohesion and logic than Savage Curtain has.
Fair enough. And I'm not a big hater of Spock's brain. I think there's many episodes worse. But we're not here to talk about brains. We're not here to talk about curtains, regardless of how savage they may be. We're here to talk about Star Trek Discovery, here at last, available for streaming on CBS All Access here in the States, on Netflix most of the rest of the world, unless you're in Canada where you can watch it on cable, or China where you can't watch it at all. You're probably not watching us behind the Great Firewall, though. So we're gonna just go around and talk about what we saw the first 2 episodes, but I think we should talk about them as one singular episode. They were part of the same narrative.
It's like a 2-parter.
Yeah, it was basically the same as like Encounter at Farpoint Parts 1 and 2, or Emissary Parts 1 and 2, or Caretaker 1 and 2, Broken Bow 1 and 2. So we have the Vulcan Hello was Part 1, and Part 2 was the Battle at the Binary Stars. And we're just going to go around and mention what our takes on it was. So, Brian, just general thoughts. How did you feel about these 2 episodes, and how does it make you feel about Discovery going forward?
Well, first thing, it's definitely Star Trek. Absolutely, unambiguously, this is Star Trek. You might argue that it's some sort of reboot, whether the continuity matches up to your own personal tastes and the look, but it is definitely a Star Trek.
You're not going to confuse this for Space Above and Beyond.
Yes. You not only on the details of what they talk about and how but the whole philosophy, the ideology, the structure. It's written by people who understand Star Trek, and it is a Star Trek show, absolutely and utterly. And so far, I think it's a pretty good Star Trek show. I would say that's a stronger premiere than Deep Space Nine had. Arguably a stronger premiere than the original series had, but then their pilots were a little weird, and different. Still working out what Star Trek was supposed to be at that point. So,
sure.
And probably, I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch Encounter at Farpoint. It might even be stronger than in the premiere of
I'm pretty sure it was.
It's funny because we dislike Encounter at Farpoint as far as like the rankings of the premiere episodes. Me and Dave both rank Encounter at Farpoint as possibly the lowest of all the premieres, I think.
That might be.
It is. Well, they had production issues with that, but yes, it is there's some roughness in that first season, every episode of TNG.
But traditionally, Star Trek premieres haven't lived up to the potential that's realized later. The premieres don't compare as favorably to what the show eventually becomes.
Yeah,
which is probably true for many shows, not just Star Trek, but it's for sure a thing in Star Trek. But you feel like this was a strong opening.
I thought it was a pretty strong opening. I mean, it probably helps that they know exactly. There's a confidence about it. They know exactly where they're going with all of this. So there's okay. Here's some stuff that doesn't make sense, but it's pretty clearly supposed to not make sense, and it's supposed to make sense later. And so you don't feel like, oh, this is bad writing. You feel like you can trust these writers, and then you feel like the writers have done their homework, which is essential. Even if they convincing the audience, especially on a franchise, that you've done your homework is key to getting them to go along with you. And then you can break some rules and, oh, well, they probably did more homework than I did, and you tend to trust them more because you...
I love that you use that word confidence, because I feel like CBS has been ridiculously confident with this entire thing. Yeah. More on that in a minute. Dave, I know that you're a picky bastard, and you can be a bit prickly and cold, and...
Right?
And...
much like a Vulcan myself.
Yeah, just dismiss everything that people love.
Yep.
So let us know what you think about the show. Don't hold anything back.
My first reaction is cautiously pessimistic. Although it did feel like Star Trek to me, I don't know if it's the wartime plot, how dominant that is, or that I wasn't fully engaging with the characters. But I did not immediately feel drawn to this one. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just because it is Star Trek doesn't automatically mean it's good Star Trek. But
right.
So there's
I think there. Because it was the they were going for this was their, because of the format that they were doing, and because they were taking lessons from premier cable outlet options and stuff like that. I think I was hoping the dialogue was, and the characters were going to be a little bit stronger. I kind of felt like right out of the gate they were, broadly I guess I like them, but their dialogue wasn't crackling to me. It felt a little by the numbers between Captain Georgiou and Lieutenant Commander Burnham. I wanted to immediately feel that connection between Saru and Burnham, and they were actually a little feisty towards each other in this opener. But yeah, I'm not loving the accidental war thing. I felt like I needed the Star Trek. I needed more of the Discovery, and we since we literally didn't see the ship. I felt like it was holding back on the Trekkiness. I think when I was younger, I would have liked it a lot better because of the wartime martial soldiery elements of it. But as it was, I don't know. How did you feel, Fatheree?
So I'm going to be somewhere in the middle between the two of these gentlemen here. I was really excited by a lot of things in the show, and I'm primed to see where a lot of these things go and how they play out. But there are some elements that they kind of left me cold. I was hoping that we would see more of our regular characters. If you haven't figured it out by now, by the way, this is going to be full of spoilers.
Right. There's some big things that happen here.
There's going to be warnings in every description and title and anything you click on to get here, so it's your fault if we've spoiled anything for you. But yeah, we still haven't seen the main ship and crew of the show, or at least of the first season.
We do know that some of these characters are going to cross over into it.
There's a lot of characters that we've already learned about that we're kind of expecting to see. And so I am a little disappointed that we haven't seen that setup yet, but I do understand...
If the show had been titled Star Trek Michael instead, would you be more happy with it? Is it just a case of the title promising Discovery and then you're not getting a Discovery?
But I suppose also a break from Trek tradition, which is that you're going to see all your main characters by the end of the first episode.
And I get what they're doing here. They said, right off the gate, this is going to be a serialized story, a 15-episode arc that tells one story beginning to end. And what I feel like what we saw tonight with these 2 episodes is really the prologue to that story. I feel like with episode 3, it's almost going to be like you can just come into episode 3 and be introduced to all the characters, be introduced to the ship, be introduced to the history of what we just saw. You're in trouble because you messed up and started this war, you disobeyed orders, and
you think the tribunal that she's going to be in front of, or the some sort of the prison.
She's already
that's right.
The tribunal.
They went through that was some quick Federation trial there, by the way.
Yeah, so
if you confess, man, they'll process it fast.
That's another curious thing is what was the time lapse. I think she said this was May of 2256. So I wonder if they'll use an actual Earth date again, and we'll get an idea of how much time has passed. I know when we saw the trailer for the remainder of the season, her hair was styled differently. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they will use that as an indication that a great deal of time has passed.
Right. You grow the beard in prison.
They also did that in this episode where we saw flashbacks of Michelle Yeoh's character, and her hair was styled differently. So. Mm-hmm.
And for sure, younger Burnham too.
Yeah, but
I guess 2 different ages of younger.
I'm not freaked out or anything by what I saw as far as I'm not ready to ditch the show or anything. I overall liked it. I'm not quite satisfied, but I think that's kind of okay. It leaves me wanting more. The story structure is something that will possibly contribute to what I want to get out of the show, and
it's definitely we're only seeing part of the story, so it's hard to judge without.
It is hard to judge, and I kind of almost don't feel comfortable talking about it now because I feel like I need to see what happens next. What does this play into? But I guess that's not how premiere episodes should be judged. I guess we should judge them on the initial impact. So the initial impact that I had was it was good. It looked great. It had a lot of neat little things in there that I enjoyed, that kind of appealed to the hardcore Trek fan that I am. But overall, as I don't want to say underwhelmed, but it just left me wanting more. My appetite wasn't quite sated. I've been looking forward to the show for 2 years. I needed a little bit more to sink my teeth into. But
Federation going to war with the Klingons, that wasn't big enough.
No, I love that.
It's something bigger than that.
I love that we're seeing it from the Klingon perspective and the Federation perspective. Yeah. I think that's awesome. Yeah. But I wanted more of, I wanted to see the Discovery. I wanted more characters. I wanted a hint at the dynamics between them. I've always been very focused on narrative and character, are my 2 big things. And I got one great character. They could have fleshed her out a little bit more, but they gave me enough for the first night I see this character on screen that I kind of get her. I'm engaged. I want to see more. I would have liked a little bit more character and a little bit more setup, which I think we'll get with the 3rd episode. Given the structure they have, I think these first 2 episodes is kind of like a prologue to the 15-episode story. But Brian, was there anything that you disliked about what we saw tonight?
They didn't have a little bell when the 3 guys were doing the trial. There was no bell in front of them, and that was bullshit. And it was like, this is not Star Trek. There's got to be a little bell in front of the 3 captains when they put her on trial. No. Let's see. What did not like? There was no discussion of sending in a probe or a drone to go investigate the weird Klingon artifact.
Yeah.
And that, given the radiation ticking clock, would have made a huge amount of sense to send a probe.
Might even have triggered a war.
Probes don't push people's background.
I get, dramatically speaking, we have to have the person there, but especially with the ticking clock of the radiation, it kind of made me end up feeling like this is really a job for a probe. And if they hadn't put that clock in there, I probably would have said, sure, send a person. But when they're like, no, you have to be back in less than 20 minutes or you will die, I'm like, yeah, it's time for engineering to put a probe together. If you haven't invented probes in this point in the show, you need to invent probes.
They had some technobabble about why they couldn't just scan it.
Yeah, right. No, they did a good job with that.
Was that meant to encompass, like a probe is also not going to function really well?
Well, they need to explain why a human and their suit is going to function.
I mean, I guess was it just literally she will get eyes on, doesn't matter if it's recorded or not?
Couldn't you send a probe with a rope tied to it and then pull it back?
Well, I'm guessing that was hundreds of kilometers.
But we were talking about this as we were watching, Brian and I and a few other people that we were watching the episode with, and we couldn't think of any times that probes were used.
This is true.
Previous to the Next Generation.
Kirk
Did they have probes on the original series?
I think they launched a probe or two.
I don't remember anything like that.
Yeah, and we couldn't think of any probes.
Nomad never destroyed
Enterprise.
a probe or something.
I don't think so.
Like
I could be wrong, but I mean, it's certainly never a question I thought about. But.
This predating the original series, we couldn't think of any probes from Enterprise.
So, but I will say, the audience has grown up in a world with drones. This is not. It's like saying, "Oh, well, we're before communicators, so they shouldn't have communicators." If you're showing it to a bunch of people who have cell phones, they're going to say, "Why don't they have some sort of phone thing they can call?"
Yeah,
right.
In the drone age, we should have drones.
They probably could spend a few seconds to show one fail, or something like that, or technobabble reason.
But you would admit that's kind of a minor.
I will say it's just a technobabble continuity, plausibility issue. It is, and if my biggest complaint doesn't have to do with character or story, you're doing pretty good. So, and that isn't even, as we pointed out, a violation of canon. Since we don't have any proof they have probes, it's just kind of something that feels wrong in compared to 21st century Earth.
But you thought, as far as like the writing, they did pretty good.
It's very dry. It's not as dry as The Expanse, but there's not a lot of yucks and there's not a lot of laughs. It's about as far from J.J. Abrams' Trek as far as the character interaction goes, which is. J.J. Abrams' Trek often feels like it's trying to be like Joss Whedon, where everything's a setup and a punchline and stuff.
But not as well written Joss Whedon.
So
I said trying to be.
Yeah. And this is much more serious, much more dry. I mean, there's less jokes in this than there was in, say, Star Trek 2.
Star Trek 2 actually had a fair amount of humor in the opening, some early scenes.
So that's not bad. But that's the kind of...
But you noticed it.
They were aiming for
it should be said this isn't completely dire, though. There are some lighthearted moments.
It's funner than new BSG, yes.
Yeah, you do feel like some some chemistry between some of the characters with Captain Georgiou and Commander Burnham. You do feel that they have a fondness and respect, and
there's
they
love.
have fun.
There's friendship and there's loyalty and there's connection. It's just there's not a lot of jokes. But you feel like some people do make jokes. It's just this is a serious situation, so they're not making jokes while they're on duty in a serious situation.
I think my main takeaway from that would be that because I don't want a show that's just completely stern face, serious all the time, no lighthearted moments. And I feel like I got enough in this show in these episodes, I should say. To make me think that won't be the case, that they will, of course, with the story they were telling in these two episodes.
I better be laughing when Harry Mudd shows up.
Yeah, I'd like to see him. Although they said he's going to be a darker version of the character.
There was a sense, even in just the previews of the whole season, that he would maybe have a little bit more malice than...
Which is fine. But I still better be laughing.
It makes more sense to show ominous stuff in trailers than to show...
Right. You need the high drama. Yeah. I do wonder, like on a commercial level, given that the Abrams Trek was such a successful thing, to open with a pretty dire events happening, if that might, you would surely want the audience that made those movies hugely successful. If that might not have been a kind of a risky thing.
Well, yeah, but were they hugely successful? They've kind of been diminishing in their returns.
Sure.
Well, all three of them, the first two have significant amounts of violence and bad things happen in the opening of them. I guess it takes a while till we get to the badness and beyond. But I will say there's a huge tonal difference. If you go in expecting all the quippy, jokey J.J. Abrams film, you're not going to get that here. That could be off-putting for some people. I enjoyed it, but
Dave, do you want to elaborate on your complaints?
It's still processing a little bit. I'm going to go into it for a specific one, though.
Okay.
This is related to the Klingons. We saw all the houses, and they all still look like bald Klingons, and I was sad. That's all.
But we didn't.
I agree. Okay. That was disappointing.
I was really hoping, based on some of what they said, that somewhere in there we'd see a few different types of Klingons beyond just different skin colors and stuff.
That would have been a nice touch.
24 major houses.
Yeah.
We didn't see 24 Klingons.
Do we not see like groups? A group of
when they had the hologram.
There was nowhere
when
near
they had the
24.
hologram. When they had the hologram conference.
Okay.
Because you gotta think that all of T'Kuvma's Klingons, they're all part of his clan.
Right.
I mean, part of me wants it to be like that Doctor Who episode where they have the Daleks from the whole history of Dalekdom.
Yeah.
All 50 years of the show, all those Daleks on the screen at the same time. Having all the different types of Klingons show up would have been a lot of fun, but I can kind of see why that would be a moment for the hardcore fans, and everyone else would just be, what the hell? These are all these different aliens.
That's why I think that if we ever see that, it'll be in season 2.
Yeah. So,
But,
I can see why they didn't do it, but I still would have liked it.
But anything else you want to touch on as far
I
as
I need a specific question, maybe. I'm not.
What about the narrative didn't do it for you?
You know, I think what I want to. I guess let me say this: what I want to see in Trek is I want to see characters.
Shouldn't we like establish like what the narrative was? Like, if you just want to give like a brief. What was your take on the story? Like, if you were just gonna like cut it down to like the rawest, leanest form of it, description, what would you say happened? What did we see?
I'm going to say a peaceful attempt at exploration with sort of a time component proved to inadvertently be like kick off a firestorm between the Federation and the Klingons when
Michael Burnham,
Commander Michael Burnham, goes out to check it was like a downed relay,
communication
like a buoy
relay,
or something like that. Proves to be a cloaked, which was kind of a little bit out of nowhere. Like, I'm not quite sure why they wanted to do that, but a cloaked Klingon sarcophagus ship, and we don't know a lot about their culture yet. But she inadvertently kills one of them when he does
in
make
self-defense, though.
Right. So her intentions were good, but it kicks off a firestorm, including a breakdown of communications between...
now, my impression was Tecumseh was actually trying to set a trap to kick off a mess.
Right. They certainly brought that up a few times in the episode, that supposition.
It was a trap designed to get Starfleet to cause a problem.
Right.
Was my impression. But
yeah, because someone like intentionally cut up that relay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's true. But she takes the heat for it. Essentially, an international incident ensues with the Federation and the Klingons drawing up sides. Literally, like Civil War troops. With all their with a bunch of battleships. Staged across from each other. Mm-hmm. And things sort of get tense over a disagreement of how to handle it between Burnham and her captain. And things sort of deteriorate from there. They do ultimately play into the Klingons' hands, and after a destructive destructive sort of loss for the Federation, it seems like the Klingons end up unified in kind of a white pride kind of Klingon. They definitely had.
Would you say it was somewhat topical?
I might say so. They were
as a citizen of the United States of America.
Yes. So you may remember when we were talking about the 10 things we wanted to see. Number 1 for me was I wanted to see a world where a universe where empathy and knowledge.
You said empathy and
rationality can win the day. Not every time. Clearly, it didn't this time.
It didn't win this day.
And I think. I felt like I wanted to see more of a glimmer that it could. Like, it honestly felt kind of downbeat to me.
Oh, that's a story that they're going to tell over the 15 episodes.
It's one big story, and so we're still in the first act.
You can't win right off the gate. You gotta.
You can't in Game of Thrones, but I feel like in Star Trek, even if it was sort of one of those like. Where you show in a Bond cold opening style, you see something like that. You get a sense that is occurring, that the Federation has, these qualities to it.
Okay. They made a big deal about emphasizing those qualities.
I would counter that we got that.
Did they talk about it, or it felt like they talked about it, but they didn't show it?
We got it in the opening before the credits.
Right, they did.
The first episode.
They did do that. Maybe I just felt like they didn't make a big enough thing out of it about how important it was, because my primary feeling was kind of like I saw 2 hours of the Federation losing.
Yeah, and maybe they should have had a stronger victory in the beginning
Yeah.
I mean, the first act of a story is heroes get into trouble. We're still in the first act, so we're still in the heroes get into trouble.
Yeah, and it's probably gonna get worse.
Yeah. No, the middle act is trouble rains hard upon them.
Right. Yeah. So in order for us to get into the third act, where
heroes
they
get
win,
out of trouble.
Right.
We're gonna see them get in a shittier situation.
Right.
We should be lucky that they got out alive.
It is not
not all of them did. Not all of them did.
It is not a traditional Trek thing by any means. By doing the serialized format, maybe that's what's thrown me off. I'm planning to watch it again so I can kind of like cohere my thoughts on it a little bit more.
I'm going to be watching it again here in probably like an hour or so. But but yeah, I should say
I'm impatient
we are recording this like fresh out of the oven. We had literally just watched it. It is 11 o'clock on the night that it premiered a couple hours ago. So
yeah,
it's still very fresh and kind of settled.
I'm a guy who, like, as you know, I like the standalone episodes. Haven't watched Deep Space Nine, which is probably the maybe closest in this
the most serialized,
morally complex, long form storytelling.
Yes.
And certainly a more morally ambiguous stories in there.
Okay. Well, we got to bring this up, is that I know that you like Babylon 5.
Right? You know what? I liked before, everybody loves Babylon 5 when it became the mythology episodes kicked in season 2 and 3 and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
A lot of my favorite stuff is season 1. It's the standalone episodes.
Well, no, that's silly.
Oh, is that right?
But
I adore B5 too, but season 1 has got some really hard stuff to chew on.
Yeah,
I'm going to tell you, like, structure-wise, beyond specific, structure-wise, I like a punchy, concluded, done-in-one episode.
So.
It may be, and maybe, in a weird way, although life doesn't work that way, you don't resolve your problems at the end of the hour, that is something of the comforting nature of Star Trek, is that they often do. So
I think after 500-something hours of Star Trek, I can see why they want to do something different.
I agree with that.
Why they would want
but it did not they did not carry me along on that journey. I've seen a lot of dire stories. Game of Thrones is a very dire story, but I was like, man, I want to see what happens to these people.
The same way that Babylon 5 is very character driven, you find that in Deep Space Nine.
Right.
That was the best character writing of any Star Trek. But back to Discovery, as far as what I didn't like about the 2 episodes we saw, which I had a more positive reaction than Dave. A lot of that I can't really judge too objectively, just because I was so excited about finally watching Star Trek on TV. But I do feel like, where I did get a little disappointed was that I wanted to see more of the setup of the main show. I wanted to see characters who were going to stick around and not characters who just showed up to die and tell the story. I liked Michelle Yeoh's Captain Georgiou. I thought she did a good job, as far as a character that I know that we're not going to get to see much of. But I feel like I haven't been given enough to sink my teeth into, as far as basically the only thing I have going forward at this point is Commander Burnham and Lieutenant Saru, or Lieutenant Command. They called him Lieutenant and Lieutenant Commander, I think, in the course, which is weird, because you would only address a Lieutenant Commander as a commander or a Lieutenant Commander by standard naval and Starfleet tradition. That's a minor
It's a mistake that has happened elsewhere in Star Trek.
Yes.
It could just be a whole Mr. Savick thing that they do things differently in the future.
Absolutely. But I kind of wish I had a little bit more. I feel like, after watching a 2-episode premiere, I should have a little bit idea of what to expect, and I don't. And maybe that's an unfair criticism, but I just wanted a little bit more setup out of the first episode. I do like Commander Burnham. I do think some of the dialogue was dry. I kind of wish that they had punched it up a little bit, and I
think maybe a slightly different director and directing of the actors could have punched it up. I felt like sometimes the lines, there was nothing wrong with the lines. It was just they were being delivered in a hurry, and we're moving on with this, and maybe some of these lines should be emphasized more, and the pauses timed differently.
What did y'all think about Suruc?
Yeah, we'll get into that. Let's talk about like what we liked about the episode. So we'll start with Brian on what we liked.
Star Trek's back! Oh my god!
Yes.
Yeah. That was great, and it doesn't suck. So that was number 2 great thing. Let's see.
Yeah, they didn't Phantom Menace it.
Yeah. The people get Vulcans pretty well. They're not like horribly bad early Enterprise Vulcans. So that was nice to have Vulcans that weren't offensive and annoying and obnoxious, and I just wanted to hit them.
The Enterprise did fix the Vulcans.
Yeah, they did fix.
You gotta watch season 4.
Yeah. Just watch season 4. Don't bother with the rest of Enterprise.
That's what we talked about last week.
So I like that they did that. I thought their technobabble, Probe's issue aside, was actually really well done. As somebody who appreciates that.
They were using phase cannons instead of phasers on the Shenzhou, which they established was an older ship.
Yeah.
And we know from Enterprise that the phase cannons predate phasers.
Yeah, we're trying to now I want to go back and check the beginning of J.J. Abrams' 2009 Star Trek and see if they mentioned phasers.
Was the Kelvin using phasers or phase cannons? And let us know in the comments what you think. I liked the first officer, Burnham. Burnham. I'm terrible with names. It took me like 5 episodes to learn everyone in Deep Space Nine. But well, they had like 30 characters on the show.
Yeah, Burnham. I like Burnham. Saru seems okay. I don't have any. I need more scenes with him to get a good grip on him.
He's neat though. I'm curious to see more.
Yeah, he's not off-putting. I liked Philippa, the captain.
Yeah.
She was good. And Suruc was fine. So I like the characters. I like the story. I like that we open up big. Boom! We're gonna start this out with a big space war, and we're like, whoa! DS9 took years to get around to that. We're right out of the block.
No, this is first episode.
So and we're brave. We're gutsy. You don't even get to see the discovery in the first 2 episodes. That's how we're gonna take your favorite character and lock them up at the end. I'm like, whoa! Okay, you guys have some real big confidence in all.
You were enjoying the subversion.
Yeah, I like that they're willing to do something new, but yet it still felt incredibly entrenched in the Star Trek universe, at least a version of it. And it felt like Star Trek, but we're doing new and different things. We're not going the expected routes. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the freshness. I enjoyed that it didn't just feel like watching Orville, where I was like, I'm pretty sure I saw this episode already. So, that's what I think. What I liked about it was the fresh boldness and confidence, which could all fall apart horribly if they don't pay it off.
Did you feel any of it was too fresh, like they tried to shake things up or change things too much?
Nothing. I mean, I would
talking to admirals on holograms instead of on a little 4x3 monitor.
I would have preferred. I think I would have liked if the uniforms had looked a little bit more like the ones that they should be that we see in the cage.
Yeah.
What I would have done is just had them pull off those blue jackets and when they're off duty and throw them down, and there's that gold turtleneck, ribbed turtleneck from the cage is underneath it. You're like, hey, there it is, right there. They're just wearing jackets over it. I would have had them do that and just as a little joke, but
to be fair, we have seen Starfleet use different uniforms concurrently, and in Deep Space Nine, when we saw some people using next gen uniforms with the collars and the
I mean, okay, I would have preferred a little more continuity with the uniforms and a little more continuity with the Klingons, but whatever. If it's a good story and it's a good show and it's intelligently written and well researched and stuff like this is, I can live without the good not without the good uniforms. These uniforms look good. I like the way they look.
Yeah.
Without the continuity of the uniforms.
They look like a successor of the Enterprise uniforms or even the Kelvin uniforms.
Yes, which is nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Am I correct? There was no distinction made between departments on the uniform?
No, they did. They have a gold for command.
Where did it show?
On the sides.
On the sides.
That's right. Okay, that's right.
Gold for command, bronze for operations and engineering and stuff. Mm-hmm. And those two actually match what it should be at this period in time. Gold for command and bronze for the other.
The cage had no red shirts.
Yeah, there were no red shirts. And then instead of blue for sciences, we have silver for sciences.
Which kind of looked like Finnegan's uniform from Shore Leave.
I guess a little.
As far as
It's
like
kind
a
of
color
shiny,
scheme.
shiny shirt.
Yeah, that's like maybe Finnegan was a science cadet.
Did Michael go to Starfleet Academy or not? I was unclear on that
weird
point.
Thing,
but
yeah, like,
I know that's a wildly different topic, but I've been meaning to ask that.
No, I was concerned about that too, because they said she was the first human to go to the Vulcan Learning Center, where I guess the Vulcan children go.
But when they brought her on board the ship, she was talking like she's like, here, there's a place here for you. That was not like, kind of didn't sound like Federation terminology, like you've been promoted to this rank, or it sounded like, would you like to become the Vulcan science
like an exchange
ambassador,
officer, like T'Pol
or
how
something?
T'Pol
That's really weird if you.
But they didn't zero in on it.
If you commission someone like that as an officer and give them a rank, that would be really unusual.
Well, she was on the ship for quite a few years. I don't remember
7 years.
That is true. And
so there's 7 years for her to go from exchange officer wearing her own skin tight Vulcan science, Vulcan
like the T'Pol outfit,
T'Pol rubbish.
It's very comfortable for Vulcans.
Yeah.
It's just how they work.
To being the officer that we see her.
I remember Jolene Blaylock saying that between takes she would have to have her suit unzipped and go stand on the side of the set just so she could be able to breathe comfortably.
I feel like I should make a crude joke, but I'm not gonna.
That's probably for the best. But moving on, Dave, what were the things that you did like about the episode?
Come back to me. You go first.
We want me to go first
because I don't have anything.
That's not true.
I have a lot of
dead inside.
I have a lot of
dead.
I'm fixated on the fact that I feel like the cleverest thing that he did was put a bomb inside a Klingon corpse and blow up a Klingon ship. And that feels like the untrekkiest thing.
Why does that feel untrekky to you? Because they're using their wits.
It's kind of gross for one thing.
It's gross to mess with corpses.
It is. It's not like.
So they should never Kirk and Spock would be like, "That's too gross. We can't do that."
I guess
that's just write
it's
that
another one
off.
of those things. It's a subversion of tradition. It could. I could end up one over on it, but I'm just like. I wanted him to I want to see them use logic. I want to see them. I want to see them
use logic. They
came
up with a very clever plan that was fully effective.
These are Klingons who want to honor their dead and bring them on board. And so we gotta use that against them.
I guess I would have liked to see them find some other way to bring them down.
It sounds like you were just bothered by the fact they were using corpses.
Yeah. I don't know. If they had found a way to beam a bomb on board, it also still wouldn't have felt very Star Trek-y. I guess I think of all the times Kirk outwitted a computer or Corbomite maneuver.
We didn't see Burnham outwit a computer.
She did outwit a computer.
Did you like that?
I did enjoy that scene.
We'll talk about that. You said you didn't like anything. Talk about that.
And I also like the little sonar ping on the Enterprise on the Shenzhou's bridge too.
Oh, the sound effects.
Yes,
the doors were great.
They were also old.
Yeah, the doors. I love the doors. I wanted characters to walk through doors more often. Actually,
the phaser sound effects were from the Kelvin universe movies,
or at least in the ballpark, right? They were more like little pulses.
Yeah, closer to that than anything.
That's
else.
What they did on. Although that wasn't that way on Enterprise too.
No, they sounded like TNG pretty much.
But they did fire bursts, right?
No, on Enterprise they were a beam.
It was a sustained beam.
Mm-hmm. The rifles fired bursts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the rifles were bursts.
But even then, it sounded like TNG
pistols
bursts.
were beams.
So
she does a clever job of sort of outwitting a computer's logic center to escape from a prison. She's actually I like the idea that she was thrown in the brig and all that stuff too.
The captain didn't load her into an escape pod and shoot her down to an ice world.
Yes. It's just horrible. And Spock was on the ice world randomly just because.
On Delta Vega, which was the same name as the planet and where no man has gone before, where Kirk fought Gary Mitchell.
Yeah, I didn't see that on there. Maybe buried under the snow somewhere. I'm going to say I broadly liked, the characters were likable enough, but I'm having a hard time finding standout moments for me. I felt like, we saw a fair amount of the Klingons doing sort of ceremonial stuff, and I wasn't super drawn into their, to watching them. It didn't interest me as much as stuff I've seen on the previous TV shows.
I'm curious about the Klingons. I want to see more. I got a hint about them from this show. But they definitely seem they seem more alien. And
was there much talk of the sort of the usual Klingon honor and stuff?
They didn't really They didn't really talk about like these Klingons too much in this episode. But
I mean, broadly, what we've got is a sort of seems like a religious zealot taking over.
And we know
Empire.
We know from writers and producers and interviews and stuff, things that we've talked about on Tex-Trek before. That these are a very different type of Klingons. These aren't the typical.
Philosophically or biologically, both, right?
Well, probably both.
Don't we know that they were like they've been kind of like they're like a little sort of their own little sect.
Yeah, they've been
it's like a little Klingon Mormon ship flying around.
Yeah, they're like these Klingon Puritans was the quote that was used by I think Ted Sullivan or maybe I don't know Aaron Harvest.
Because evangelical would be too on the nose.
Yeah, but as far as what I liked about the show, I did like seeing things from the Klingon perspective, even though part of me still wishes they were a little bit more traditional Klingons, just because I'm such a fanboy for Klingons from the TNG Deep Space Nine era. Those are like part of my... I don't want to say like that's part of why I love Star Trek, because I love so many different aspects of Star Trek, but I guess...
You do have a batleth on the wall about 3 feet, or 6 or 7 feet from us.
Yeah, I mean, like that is part of it. It's not like the main part, but that's definitely a big thing that I enjoy out of those previous incarnations, and I really want to connect it with the Klingons in Discovery. So I did think
I would have actually loved to have seen some traditional Next Generation-y type Klingons or TOS versions.
We've had this conversation before, though.
But that were like not that were like essentially kind of overrun by the philosophy of the how do you say his name? Tekuvma?
Tekuvma.
Yeah, I'm reversing.
Oh, like he had recruited them into his Kahless cult,
right? Or they are just politically pressured into backing his play or whatever. That's just I would have liked to have seen some of that traditional, what we think of as traditional culture, even though that's changed a little bit between TOS and TNG.
Well, they could have just had the Klingons be completely authentic to continuity, hired a bunch of white people, painted their faces Middle Eastern brown, and then had them behave like cartoon villains. I'm sure that would work today. That would have been a great idea, right?
And I don't mind seeing Klingon variation. In fact, that's actually Star Trek tradition.
Yeah, I think they had to change the Klingons somewhat.
I do love the idea of seeing a war from both sides, and I hope that we do see a lot more of the Klingon side, and that we do see not just Tekuvma's faction, but some of the other factions in the Klingon Empire. Even if they're all like bald and look like him, I do want to see like those different perspectives.
Well, they were giving us more Klingon action than most stories in Star Trek.
Yeah, no, this will be like season 1 of Discovery will be like that Klingon season. Like that's how it'll be remembered.
That'd be an interesting possibility.
And the other things I really liked was I loved the look of the show. I love the sets. I love the ships. We got to see so many ships. I wanted to just watch this in freeze frame and look at every ship design.
Yeah, when the Federation posse shows up, were those known ships?
No, but they had like similar aspects. Like the Europa had kind of the same traits as the Reliant or the
I saw one with
even the Constellation.
One that had the quad nacelles.
Yeah, the four nacelle Constellation style.
Mm-hmm. They were unambiguously Starfleet ships. Even though the specifics were different, anybody would say, "Oh yeah, that's a Star Trek ship."
Now the Klingon ships were a bit more weird to me. I would like to see like some D7s, but the Federation ships I loved. I liked the sound effects on the bridge. We already knew about the props, the communicators and phasers, but yeah, I love those. I love the production design of the ships. This is the corridors, the bridge, the ready room. Even though Kirk didn't have a ready room, maybe he did. We just never saw it. But
Kirk is always ready.
It is good. It is interesting. They did try to upgrade a few things, like with the holographic communication.
Yeah.
The only time we saw that before was in Deep Space Nine, actually. There were a couple episodes where they were using...
you could argue that's a continuity flaw in that they made a big deal about how they hadn't... This was new tech that hadn't been used before, and yet...
But it kind of makes sense because we're pretty close to that type of technology now.
Yeah, the idea that they wouldn't have that in Star Trek seems absurd.
I couldn't tell if it was my CBS All Access streaming that was glitching, or if it was intentional, but it kind of seemed like when they were in hologram form, they would kind of like freeze.
They would buffer.
Yeah, they would skip a few frames, and I thought that was kind of cool. It made it realistic, and it made it connect to things that modern audiences experience with technology. It made it feel more real.
Right. Even though it's supposed to be futuristic, we still need to feel it's somewhat relatable.
Yeah. And it makes sense.
Did hologram Suruc at some point go and kind of sit down or kind of lean up against something?
Yeah, that was weird.
I was just checking to make sure I saw that right. He was like, eh.
I mean, for all we know, that he was actually leaning against something that was in the same spot.
Right.
Maybe he's in the exact same room somewhere else.
What would have been amusing is if he leans up against an invisible thing and then the computer realizes what's going on and suddenly just slides him over to a wall so it doesn't look weird.
Yeah. Dave, you did mention Suruc earlier. So let's all give our thoughts on Suruc real quick.
Yep. The actor playing this
James Frain, we know him from Gotham.
Yeah.
Dave watches, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know about Brian, but...
No, I do not watch. I've never seen an episode of Gotham.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I'm watching it because it's ridiculous. I thought he was a pretty good Suruc. He was a little... I'm trying to think. Yeah, he was a little snippy the way Suruc is. They introduced some ideas about him that we hadn't seen before. The long range mind meld was a big thing. That was a big reveal. Have they done anything quite like that? It does seem sometimes the quasi mysticism of Vulcans is sometimes shown to occur over vast distances.
It happens in probably the most canonical thing I can think of off the top of my head is, and I don't know how, the novelization of Star Trek the Motion Picture written by Gene Roddenberry himself has Spock actually being so startled when he makes contact with V'ger while he's still on Vulcan that he inadvertently broadcasts some thoughts to Kirk back on Earth.
Yeah, I remember this.
And I only bring it up. There are other novels where stuff like that happens too, but
kind of
that one's written by Roddenberry, or at least he reviewed it personally and approved it to have his name stamped as the writer. I think it might have actually been Alan Dean Foster, but so that is worth mentioning.
You know what I thought was a little weird? When he's talking to Burnham, they're in the middle of a battle, and they're kind of having a casual conversation, like, hey, could you fill me in on how the Vulcans dealt with the Klingons initially? And they kind of chat about it a little bit.
That was before the battle.
That was before the battle. But it was
right on the cusp.
It was on the cusp.
It was high tension. Because the captain was like, are you serious? You want off the bridge?
Right. I like
that.
Are
you fucking kidding me?
She should be like, I can tell you what I'm going to do, but you didn't tell me what you're doing with your footprint thing earlier, so it's payback time. And then they actually started the world, right? And that wasn't as funny. But it was otherwise a good prank. No, I was just a little weirded out that, the situation was right on the verge of war, and their conversation got a little casual, and
it wasn't weird and near as awkward as when they dial up Spock in Star Trek Into Darkness. Which was a very similar situation.
Can you conveniently tell us how to deal with a bad guy named Khan?
That was...
General thoughts on
that scene, though, but that's another discussion for another time.
Thoughts on the portrayal of Suruc, though? Did he feel like a slightly younger incarnation of
Suruc? I'm not an expert on Suruc. I'd have to go back and rewatch some of the stuff and pay a little more attention to the portrayal. But he didn't feel off to me. He didn't rub me the wrong way. As the fourth guy to play Suruc, I was like, okay, yeah, sure, this is Suruc.
It's hard for me to picture someone other than Mark Leonard playing the character.
He's a very commanding presence.
Yeah, but James Frain didn't do anything that really seemed off. I can buy it. The most compelling thing, though, was probably the mind meld sequences with Burnham, though, because
he did that because to initially left a piece of his katra in her. Was it to assuage her grief when her parents died?
That's what I'm thinking. But I'm thinking it's something that we'll see explored more.
I mean, symbolically,
practically speaking,
symbolically, we see her dying, and he gives some of his own life to bring her back.
Right.
Now, what the mechanics in universe are going to be for that,
Sure.
but symbolically, that's certainly what we saw. Is he gave some of his own life to save her life, and now they are connected.
Maybe he wouldn't have been such a dick to Spock if he...
And I don't know if they're going to explicitly say, yeah, that's how Vulcan neural energy katras actually work, or if that's just a symbolic thing that we're supposed to pick up on unconsciously when we watch the show.
And I should say, my takeaway from it wasn't that it was a long-range mind meld. I felt she was communicating with the part of his Katra that was left in
That's
her.
not a bad idea.
Right,
Now I want to rewatch it.
The equivalent of talking to an advanced AI.
Well, it's like if you have like this software installed in your brain.
I mean, I was
you interact with it sometimes, and she was just like revisiting that.
You know,
part.
in Superman the movie when he's talking to Jor-El, but Jor-El's long dead.
Yeah,
it's like a supercomputer.
Yeah, like it can't tell you anything new, but it's like here's all the information I got for you at this point, and you can use it at any
now
time.
I want to rewatch the scene with that in mind.
So that was
not
my take on it.
It's just that there's a
right.
bit
In fact, I don't think they used that term. They did. He mentioned the Katra.
Yeah, he said something like, "With this, this is from my Katra that I made contact with you years ago," or something like that.
But practically speaking, what it means is that we will see him more throughout the series.
Yes,
as she will either maybe learn to call on him in times of need, or he will pop up.
Yeah, either way, this is an opportunity for them to use the character Suruc in any episode.
I do think that's a neat idea. I'll give him that. I thought that I think that's a clever addition to the show and a neat way to get some drama between those characters.
And as someone who I don't watch a ton of TV. I mean, like I watch Star Trek all the time, but I also spend a lot of time reading comics, read prose occasionally. I kind of like it when there's pictures in comic book form, but I like getting inside characters' heads, and that's going to be a good way for a TV show to get inside the main character's head. Is you could have her, mentally converse with Suruc,
right,
whenever she's trying to decide something, or worried about something, or coping with something.
Roddenberry's original idea with the holodeck was that the characters were to regularly go to the holodeck and work out their psychological issues, talking to whatever character might be most helpful to them. You see a little bit of that in season 1, but it basically falls apart, it falls away. But that was supposed
it specifically
to
talk to them, not to have a Finnegan mano-a-mano thing?
Sometimes that.
Okay, but it could have been.
And you see, the one where Picard goes to Paris, Hollow Paris, and meets that girl, and that was supposed to. There was supposed to be a whole lot of that. That's what the holodeck was, to give us a window into their souls. But then it turned out that most people thought it was weird that you would be so insecure that you would go and play out your insecurities on the holodeck, and they decided not to write that way. So.
On that note, going back to Discovery, before people were such pussies and needed a holodeck to go work out their feelings, back when they were at war with Klingons and shit. Brian, what are your final thoughts on the Vulcan Hello and the Battle of the Binary Stars?
Taken as a whole, I give it an 8 out of 10, which is to say, quite enjoyable. Not
it's a
perfect.
High rating.
Yeah. Not perfect, but definitely enough that I don't feel any reservations about recommending this to people who like Star Trek.
Agreed.
And with the caveat that it's not as cutesy, funny, jokey as some Star Trek has been. But other than that, I would say give it a chance. I thought it was intelligent, well thought out, well researched. And has an intriguing story that will hopefully unfold into something meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to get out about it? Anything we didn't get to mention that you want?
I also love the fact that we're getting a real insight into the Klingon side of things. Yeah. That was great. I like that they did some good science research and good technobabble.
These writers were reading articles on Memory Alpha.
I did appreciate that they've done their homework.
They know phase cannons. They know that term.
I love the moment where they said, "Why is that sound still on?" when the sound was ringing. It's it's causing the hall to resonate. And I was like, "That's a great idea. That's something they've never done in Star Trek before."
That was cool.
But that was a very nice touch, showing that they could do more than just copy technobabble from other Star Trek episodes. They could come up with their own clever sciencey ideas to make things happen in the show the way they want to. So I appreciated that little detail. So.
Dave, what were your final thoughts?
My final thoughts will be after I rewatch the episodes. And I know you love assigning numerical values to the episodes.
No, I hate that.
Yeah, I know. But since he did it, I'm doing it too.
Sorry, I didn't know that was a taboo.
That's all right. I feel like for me, these come out to be more of a 5 out of 10. I'm going to say solid enough. But
that's not bad.
But did not energize me, so to speak. I didn't mean to do that. It just came out that way.
So the two of y'all average like a 6.5.
What's that?
The two of y'all average like a 6.5.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I'm going to say I come in at a 7.
Okay.
So that'll bump it up a little bit more. No, I liked the episode. I just wanted a little bit more setup for the main show. I understand, though, that this isn't the same type of approach that we've seen in previous Star Trek, where past shows kind of wanted to give you an idea of what like a typical episode would be like. You know, Encounter at Farpoint didn't need to be a 2-hour premiere. It could have been like a shorter story about like, okay, this weird space station they go and visit and investigate and has a mystery with a resolution. And it kind of gives you an idea of like, okay, they're taking like a similar approach that the original series took as far as premise goes, but they're also adding a lot of new elements like having kids around and holodecks, things like that. You know, you kind of watch Encounter at Farpoint, you have a little bit of idea what the next generation is going to be about.
Sure, I mean, Picard did a lot of... He did, like, mission statement stuff and, like, put it on trial, literally. But it was also dry and bland.
Whereas this, I feel like it's a prologue to a book, and I'm not going to see Chapter 1 until next week.
I do think it probably is something of an indication of what we're going to see, though, which is to say serial format stories, cliffhanger-type endings. I think we're seeing some of the broad, stylistic, the directing choices and things like that, tonal choices. I think in that, I bet it is probably something of a reasonable preview of it.
I felt like I had a good grip stylistically. I mean, tonally and stylistically, I feel like I know where this show is going. I don't know plot-wise where it's going.
Yeah, and I like a lot of the style. I like that it's different and familiar in good ways. I like I love the special effects. The ships on Star Trek have never looked this good. Some of the designs, I thought some of the Klingon designs are a little weird, but I loved the Federation ships. Seeing the Europa get destroyed was fucking beautiful. Apologies to that admiral who bit the dust after he shaved the Shinjo.
Yeah,
they blew his ship up after he saved the Shinjo and her crew. But it looked great. It definitely feels like a show where they're spending $8 million per episode. I don't have any reservations about paying for it. I'm definitely looking forward to the remaining 13 episodes. And I guess my final remarks would just be that I'm ready to see more of the characters and the ship and the setting of what I'm hoping is going to be a show that lasts for a few years. So I know that they can't do like an Encounter at Farpoint where like they introduce, here's Geordi, here's Data, here's everyone on the Enterprise. This is a typical episode. We're going to have an episodic format. This is what we do this week. Next week it'll be something else. I know that like they're not doing that type of setup. This is more of a long-form serialized story. But I'm ready to get that just that presentation of what the show will be.
Right, and certainly getting her on board the Discovery will be a big part of that.
The other takeaway of that is I'm really looking forward to next week.
Yep.
So I think that's going to do it. But going forward, Tex-Trek will be available weekly. Hopefully on Mondays every week we will be discussing, Dave and I will be discussing every episode of Star Trek Discovery. We'll try to have some people on board from time to time. Brian, you have an open invitation to join us any Sunday night. You're ready to come over and record with us. We have a few other guests that might revisit. And we're also going to be talking about the Discovery novel that comes out Tuesday on the 26th on Dave's birthday. This is from author David Mack, has a birthday present for Dave and really for all of us with Star Trek Discovery Desperate Hours, a prequel novel which I'm thinking is about Commander Burnham and Captain Georgiou having adventures together.
Their 7-year span.
Yeah.
It's going to be something along those lines, and we will be talking about that probably sometime in November after Discovery goes on hiatus. We will be doing books on Tex-Trek, which we have never talked about before in depth. So if anyone wants to be part of that conversation, go ahead and buy that book, read it, and watch us, listen to us, talk about it at some point in November. And I think that's going to wrap it up. So me and Dave will do our traditional
signature
farewell. Live long and prosper, y'all. Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at TXTrek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.